The world stood still. It was as if time itself paused to absorb the weight of a loss that could not be measured. On April 21, 2025, the world learned of the passing of Pope Francis, and in that moment, everything changed. The news spread quickly, touching every corner of the earth, filling homes, churches, streets, and hearts with a deep and solemn sorrow. It wasn't just the end of a life, it was the passing of a symbol, of humility, of service, of unwavering compassion. He was not just a pope. He was a father, a shepherd, a friend to the forgotten, and a light for the confused. And now, the world had lost him. In homes where his voice once brought comfort, silence settled like dust. In churches where his teachings were read with reverence, candles were lit not for prayer requests, but for farewell. Across continents, languages, and cultures, one emotion connected humanity: grief. It was the kind of grief that transcends belief systems, the kind that unites people not by ideology, but by a shared recognition of goodness lost. The skies over Vatican City were heavy with clouds, but even they seemed to mourn quietly. At the heart of this sorrow stood one man who had walked closely beside Pope Francis through his years of service, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. He had been a trusted voice, a fellow servant, and a dear friend. When the news was confirmed, it was he who stepped forward to speak to the world. The air in St. Peter's Square was still. What is usually a bustling place filled with laughter and wonder turned into a sanctuary of silence. People gathered not to witness a ceremony, but to hold one another up in mourning. Their eyes turned to the balcony, waiting for words that might offer some healing. When Cardinal Tagle appeared, he was not a man of title or power in that moment. He was simply a man in pain, just like the millions who stood below and watched from afar. His voice trembled as he began to speak, and with every word the world felt his sorrow. "Brothers and sisters," he said, his voice strained with emotion, "our hearts are heavy." It was not a speech filled with pomp or grandeur. It was a message soaked in sincerity, a cry from one heart to many. He spoke of the Pope not as an untouchable figure, but as a human being, a man who loved deeply, who served without hesitation, and who carried the burdens of the world on his gentle shoulders. Cardinal Tagle remembered how Pope Francis would lean in to listen when others would turn away, how he would embrace the broken without question, and how he would always find the right words to say when the world seemed too dark. He was a man of peace, the Cardinal said, and peace was not just something he preached, it was something he practiced every day. He told stories of the Pope's quiet gestures, the way he would visit hospitals without cameras, how he would write letters by hand, how he made time for the elderly and the young, for the powerful and the powerless alike. As Cardinal Tagle spoke, tears streamed down his face. And with every tear it felt as though he was giving permission to the world to mourn openly, to feel the ache of loss without shame. It was a rare thing to see such vulnerability in a leader, but that was what made the moment so powerful. His grief reflected the grief of millions, and his words wrapped around the crowd like a blanket, soft, warm, and deeply needed. He reminded everyone that Pope Francis was more than his position. He was a living example of what love could look like when lived out loud. He chose simplicity over grandeur. He chose people over protocol. He was a bridge in a divided world. "We are not just mourning the death of a pope," Cardinal Tagle continued. "We are mourning the loss of a soul who chose kindness as his weapon and mercy as his message." There was a stillness in the square, not from silence alone, but from reflection. People thought back to the first time they saw Pope Francis wave from that same balcony after his election. He had smiled gently and asked for prayers. It was never about him. It was always about others. That was who he was. And now, as his friend spoke with tears and trembling hands, it became even clearer that the Pope had lived a life poured out for others. Yet even in grief, there was hope. Cardinal Tagle spoke of that hope, the one that Pope Francis had always believed in. Hope that love will always be stronger than hate. Hope that compassion can still be louder than cruelty. Hope that the legacy left behind would not fade but grow, carried forward in the lives of those he had touched. He said, "The Pope is gone, yes, but his mission is not over. It continues through us.